April's wild weather pattern continues with record-breaking heat across the western plains as we see record snowfall for the Northeast. We have all the details and more next on the Weather Farm. Welcome to the Weather Farm. We have your weekend forecast, and we're going to start right in here. We see a trough over the eastern half of the United States that has brought showers and storms through the Ohio Valley on our Thursday. In fact, we had some tornadoes break out across southern Indiana into Kentucky on our Thursday. They did a lot of damage. That system is now moving to the East Coast as we begin our Friday. It's going to get its act together, and it's actually going to spin up, and it's going to start turning into a very significant weather maker from Pennsylvania all the way up to Maine this upcoming weekend. So we'll get to the details in just a minute. Out west, we have warm temperatures, and when I mean warm, friends, we are talking about record-breaking heat for places like eastern Colorado, western Kansas, western Nebraska, through the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas. We're going to see temperatures this weekend surge into the 90s. We'll get to those details, but we don't want to forget British Columbia. They are seeing some snowfall in those higher elevations as yet another system continues to make its way onshore. As we move into northern Alberta, though, that is turning into rain as that warmth is surging up across the Rockies on the lee side of the mountains, and that is giving warm conditions to that part of the country. In fact, as we look at our temperatures, we're seeing those 70s and even upper 70s, near 80, surging all the way to the Canadian border for our Friday. Parts of eastern Montana, eastern Wyoming, the western part of the Dakotas, you're going to be nearing record territory for your Friday. Out in the desert Southwest, we've been talking about this all week. You are going to be sizzling with your temperatures approaching the century mark. But it is that trough that's dug in real deep across the eastern half of the United States that's going to keep temperatures generally 5 to 10 degrees below seasonal norms. But as we get into the weekend, we're going to see a widespread snow event from Pennsylvania into Maine. And let's take a look at that as we get to our Saturday. We start to see that low offshore. It's getting its act together, and it's starting to bring in a mix of precipitation for New Jersey into Connecticut and Massachusetts. And that system's only going to intensify as it continues to move to the northeast over the weekend. And out across the central plains again, that ridge of warm air is trying to move ever so slightly to the east, but it is just getting stalled by that deep trough that's really entrenched itself across the eastern half of the United States. And so we see across the northeast for our Saturday, temperatures are going to be held down in the 30s and 40s across most of that area, while we have widespread 90s. Denver, you could be approaching 90 degrees on your Saturday. This is a great weekend to get out and enjoy the wonderful spring weather. Get some rollerblading in, get some cycling in if that's what you're into. And again, out across the Pacific Northwest, a little bit cooler with that snow across British Columbia, but also cooler conditions across the Pacific Northwest. So let's take a look at that storm system in its action. So we start to see rain spreading across Virginia Friday night into Saturday, and that low moves offshore, and then it quickly turns in because there's going to be enough cold air in place that we're going to see snowfall across this region Saturday into Sunday, especially as that low gets up towards Nova Scotia. We could see the snow really flying across Maine on our Sunday. But then we watch across the northern plains as yet another trough begins to dig across the northern plains into the Ohio Valley, snow across the northern Great Lakes into Ontario for early next week. In terms of that snowfall, we're going to see the greatest amounts over in British Columbia, where those higher elevations could see 1 to 2 feet of snow. In those mountainous regions of Alberta, we're going to see 6 to 10 inches of snow. Now, I want to point to the northeast here. This map does tend to overdo the snowfall amounts just a little bit. I don't think it's going to be that snowy across the area. We're going to probably see in those highest elevations, those mountain ranges, the White Mountains, the Green Mountains, you could see 3 to 6 inches of snow. But for most places, we're going to see maybe up to an inch of snow. So that's the one thing I want to caution you about when you look at this particular map, is I do think it is overdoing the snowfall amount. Could we see a locally 2-inch amount? Sure, that's going to be far and few between. The real story is going to be the precipitation as we go through this weekend. So as that system moves out of the southeast and moves up the coast, it's going to bring generally a half an inch to an inch of precipitation from the Carolinas all the way through Pennsylvania up into Maine. And we take a look back out to the Pacific Northwest, Washington State and Oregon, you're going to have a little bit of rain this coming weekend, about a half of an inch likely at most, but it is again in British Columbia in those higher mountain ranges where we see that greatest precipitation. Across the Dakotas, across the northern tier of the United States, that's that system that's going to be making its way across there Sunday into Monday. That's going to bring another shot of colder air for the eastern half of the United States to begin our new week. And let's take a look at that. As we see our Monday here, we see snow flying across the Dakotas into Minnesota, into the UP of Michigan, associated with a low pressure that continues to move off to the north and east. We see behind it those blue 500 millibar contour height lines. They're digging deep. So where you were in the 80s and near 90 for your Friday with temperatures across the Dakotas, you're cooling down quickly by the time we get to Monday. And that colder air is going to spread to the east as yet another ridge continues to build from the west back into the central plains. So don't worry if you're in North Dakota or South Dakota, this cold snap isn't going to last very long. And we can see on our temperatures have cooled up to the 40s across that northern tier of the United States. We are getting a little bit of surge of warmer air across the southeast up towards Virginia, temperatures approaching the 80s. And really, the temperatures are suppressed. The 90s are down in far southern, central, and southern Texas. And so it's a general quiet day for our Monday. But what's causing all of this, and why are we seeing these big fluctuations in the temperatures, in the weather patterns, where we have severe weather one day, we see snow another day? A lot of that has to do with how the jet stream is going. So let's take a look at that jet stream. We see that trough digging across the eastern half of the United States, and it's going to deepen as that low pressure system works its way up the east coast. We see a big ridge across the central plains. That's going to bring you the record amount of warmth this weekend. But then we see across Montana into the Dakotas, we see another buckle in the jet stream. That's that next trough, and that's going to dig deep down into the south and east as we get Monday into Tuesday. It's going to provide a reinforcing shot of colder air for the eastern half of the United States, and behind it, we see that ridge again building across the western coast, and then it moves towards the central plains by the time we get to the middle of next week. And this is the general pattern that we think we're going to be in for the next 8 to 14 days. Warm in the west with ridging, and then cooler in the east as we see trough after trough make its way through that area. So there's going to be a strong northwesterly flow. And as we get towards Easter, pay attention there around the northeast. That could be a significant storm system. Could it be rain? Could it be snow? And look at how that pattern buckled across the northern plains as we got towards. So we're looking at gearing up for some significant weather events as we get to the northeast, as we get into the middle and late parts of next week and approach that Easter Sunday. A lot to be determined. It's still 8 to 10 days away, but there are signs that there could be a significant storm. As far as our temperatures, as we go into next week, we're seeing this weekend, again, the eastern half of the United States below normal. This is your temperature anomaly map. So these numbers represent the deviation from your seasonal norms at that particular time of the day for your location. And so we see across the plains warm weather, 15, 20, 25 degrees above normal. But then as we get into next week, we start to see that warmth spreading a little bit east, but then it's reinforced by another jab of colder air with that northwesterly flow by the time we get to Tuesday. Temperatures 10, 15, 20 degrees below normal across most of the Ohio Valley. And in terms of our weather systems, we see that low pressure move across the Great Lakes. It's just going to sit and spin in Quebec for a while. So the Northeast is going to have pretty unsettled weather by the time we get to the middle of next week. But then we see a little system move across the Central Plains down toward the Tennessee Valley. That's going to be something to watch by Thursday and its weather potential. But that energy is going to then reform off the coast. And then now we start to see the beginnings of that significant storm that is possible by the time we get to the 19th or 20th of April. A lot to be determined, a lot to still figure out with each of the new model runs. But there are signs that this weather system that moves out of the Rockies through the Tennessee Valley with potentially severe weather a week from now As that energy moves offshore, it's going to strengthen and intensify into a significant weather system for the Northeast. So stay tuned for that. But after we get past the Easter holiday, most of the country is expected to be well above normal for temperatures. So that system that we saw in the Northeast and we see with the below normal temperatures likely during the period of the 18th to the 24th, that could be one of the last shots of winter weather, a significant winter weather that we see in the lower 48 before we flip the calendar at the end of the month. And also in terms of precipitation, we're not going to really see those flooding rains that we've seen over the last several days, but we're going to see near normal to slightly below normal amount of precipitation for most of the United States during the 8 to 14 day outlook that takes us into that last full week of April. Well, we hope you have a wonderful weekend. We hope you found this video very helpful to plan your weekend events. What are the things that you're planning on doing this weekend? Drop them down in the comments, like, subscribe, share this video with your friends, and we hope to see you again on Monday. Have a great weekend.